Hello, I hope everybody's having a great evening. It's good to see y'all in chat. Thanks for joining me as I rebuild my platform. It's a huge help if you subscribe so you could keep up with everything I put out. And if you have the means, you could also check out my Patreon where you can get a package deal on some of my books and some other cool stuff like that. Got a ton of stories to go through today. What's up, everybody? Oh, nice. It's already muted. Usually every day when I sign on, I get this big echo coming from the other window that I have the chat up in. But yeah, I had a couple things saved here. Obviously, like the big news today was the Supreme Court striking down Trump's tariff decisions, or his orders, I guess you could say, which is quite it's quite interesting and actually surprising because he has the Supreme Court stacked, but like it's also one of those things where it's hurting their money at the end of the day. The corporate class and the people that the Supreme Court ultimately represents. It's very weird that Trump is almost working against his own interests with the tariff thing. I haven't really been able to figure out like if he has an actual intelligent play there, or if it's just the fact that he likes that it gives him bully power, if it's just that simple, or if it is because he has the McKinley thing stuck in his head and thinks that that is, that time in history was the best time in US history. He's said some really unhinged shit though, and I have a couple clips to highlight that. And then there's this whole thing with Lutnick. He has totally scammed this whole thing out and basically made a bunch of money on the fact that the Supreme Court did not approve the tariffs, even though he has been saying on all the news channels that they are definitely going to approve it. So why was he betting against that? His defense may be that he was hedging, like that he was playing both sides of the bet. I would imagine that's what his defense will be. But it's still shady, especially when you're a government official. Like, yeah, if you're a hedge fund, yeah. But oh wait, I gotta turn my speaker on. Sorry if you get a noise here for a minute. Then I'll play some of these clips. Oh wait, I'm not even sharing my screen. Let me do that real quick. Here we go.
Can't charge $1. I would have used 1 penny, but we don't make the pennies anymore. We save money. Can't charge $1 to any country under IEPA. Not $1. I assume to
AIPA. He has a way with certain words, you know what I mean?
protect other countries. This must have been done to protect those other countries, certainly not the United States of America, which they should be interested in protecting. That's what they're supposed to be protecting. But I am allowed to cut off any and all trade or business with that same country. In other words, I can destroy the trade. I can destroy the country. I'm even allowed to impose a foreign country destroying embargo. I can embargo. I can do anything I want, but I can't charge $1 because that's not what it says. And that's not the way it even reads. I can do anything I want to do to them, but I can't charge any money. So I'm allowed to destroy the country, but I can't charge them a little fee. I could give them a little 2 cent fee, but I cannot charge under any circumstances. I cannot charge them anything.
At the end of the day, he's charging us, really. It's the consumer who ends up paying. What does he say here? Yeah, now he says that he's going to ignore the Supreme Court and impose a 10% tariff on the world.
Therefore, effective immediately, all national security tariffs under Section 232 and existing Section 301 tariffs, they're existing, they're there, remain in place, fully in place, and in full force and effect. Today, I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122 over and above our normal tariffs already being charged. Therefore, effective immediately.
What a psychopath. And here is Stephen
Good
Miller
news, Laura. As cowardly
once again talking about how they are just going to do whatever they want.
as horrendous as the Supreme Court ruling was, as poorly as it reflects on John Roberts' court and the continued torturing of our statutes and our Constitution, here's the good news. The court also affirmed the president has the authority under Section 301, Section 232, Section 122, Section 338, and many other provisions of federal law that the president can levy tariffs on foreign nations. So his program will not only be fully reconstituted, but it will be expanded. And one more point, Laura. The Supreme Court also affirmed that under IEPA, the president has authority to restrict, impede, deny, license, or even fully embargo any foreign trade. So the net result of all this is we're going to keep and grow the tariffs to bring back American manufacturing, which keeps prices low.
They all got to stand there and keep that awkward smile going on, or is this like a still picture that they are panning across? Because it seems like it's actually people who are just standing there.
Incentivizing products
Yeah,
made
he's
here in
blinking. What
America,
the
but
hell? Did you see that?
it also means that President Trump has even more tools when it comes to dealing with foreign countries that undermine our security.
Yeah, I didn't mean to get distracted by the Supreme Court's weird that was very strange. Let's get into this Nutlick story here though. Trump's official son may make tons of money after Supreme Court ruling. He might get away with it because it's his sons. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick's sons, Brandon and Kyle Lutnick, who lead financial services firm Counter Fitzgerald's parent company, could benefit financially from the Supreme Court's Friday ruling that invalidated most of President Donald Trump's sweeping emergency tariffs, a decision that opens the door to seeking refunds of duties already paid. Let's see what else we got here. It says that the Supreme Court's Friday decision was focused on tariffs. Keep on giving me this pop-up. Tariffs enacted through IEPA, which has also been a core pillar of his economic policy since Trump took office in January 2025. Trump has repeatedly announced, imposed, paused, and reinstated a slew of tariffs at varying rates at the U.S. Yeah, we know that. It's basically given us the background here. Lutnick previously served as CEO of Counter Fitzgerald before stepping down to become the Secretary of Commerce. Brandon and Kyle Lutnick now hold senior leadership roles at Counter Fitzgerald and its parent company following their father's departure. Brandon Lutnick serves as chairman, while Kyle Lutnick is executive vice chairman, overseeing the firm's affiliated businesses. Counter Fitzgerald has never executed any transactions or taken risk on the legality of tariffs. Any report suggesting otherwise is completely false, a spokesperson for the firm told Newsweek via email on Friday. The court did not address whether companies or individuals would receive any refunds for the billions of dollars that they have paid in tariffs over the past year. So let's see. In July 2025, Wired reported that traders at the firm's investment banking subsidiary, Karen Fitzgerald, say that they have the capacity to buy the rights to hundreds of millions of dollars in potential refunds from companies who have paid Trump's tariffs. Despite Lutnick's outspoken support for tariffs as Commerce Secretary, Cantor Fitzgerald has drawn scrutiny after reports said it explored deals that it would let investors profit if Trump's tariffs were struck down in court by buying rights to potential tariff refunds from companies that paid the duties. Yeah, I mean, this can get a little bit weird. Like, they might have some kind of defense here legally, even though it's shady as hell, because of the fact that, you know, they are like, probably somewhat of a hedge fund, I would assume, and because they all are now. And that means that they like bet every side of every, um, trade, and they have this weird calculus where they win no matter what happens. Um, and that may be what they are doing, or what their excuse ends up being. Um, let's see if there's anything else here. But it is very, very shady. I would like to see how many bets were made on each end, you know what I mean? Because that still factors into their calculus of what's gonna happen. Let's take a look at this. And Lutnick personally had a lot to do with actually getting these tariffs in place. This was the original article. Tariffs Commerce Secretary loves tariffs. His former investment bank is taking bets against them. Subsidiary is letting clients essentially bet that President Donald Trump's tariffs will be struck down in court. Yeah, I mean, there is a very good chance that, as this person's saying, he designed those tariffs to fail and enrich his family in the process. Howard Lutnick is the architect of Trump's tariff plan. He's the one who pushed Trump on these. And at the exact same time that he was doing this, Lutnick's son, who he appointed to take over his bank, were betting the tariffs would be struck down and buying up refund rights at 25 cents on the dollar. So if that's the only side that they were betting, then they can't use the hedging excuse. Yeah, they can't use that excuse at all. And now the government owes companies refunds, and depending on how many refund slips they're holding, the Lutnick's bank would make billions of dollars. Billions. I looked up Lutnick's like info earlier today, and he's almost a billionaire. He's got like $700 million or something like that, which means that he's definitely a billionaire between like off the book stuff. And he's definitely trying to scam this. Let's take a look at how hard he rode for the tariffs despite all this.
Secretary Howard Lutnick was at the Supreme Court to watch the discussion today and joins us now. Sir, good to have you back on. What did you see today? What do you think? How do you think they're leaning?
Well, I think they're leaning toward the president. So what happened is General Sauer, our Solicitor General, was out first, and the justices were tough. Let's say they were asking them tough questions. But when the other side got up, wow, it was very, very strong. And so I left very upbeat and very positive. And I think these justices are going to come down in favor of the president's powers, because he's stopping the emergency of what's happened to trade against the United States of America. Everybody knows it. And some of those discussions were really, really interesting. And that's why it's fun to be on the show to sort of talk about exactly what some of these justices said.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like him and Lutnick and Miller represent like the two wolves inside of MAGA, the scammer and the racist. You know what I mean? I feel like that's they're a very symbiotic. They got a symbiotic kind of thing going on. Both scumbags. This is a couple days old, but I think that this was actually a very bad take, as typical from this guy, Andrew Schultz, because he really made it seem like his perspective on this was that, all these guys that hung out with Epstein and uh, took advantage of these children were just, nerdy guys that couldn't get laid. And that is, I think, really missing the point, because, you know, these like super rich guys don't have a problem with that. They could just go get a regular sex worker if that was what they wanted. And they have plenty of opportunities to do that. And there are plenty of options for them where they can do NDAs and stuff like that. But that doesn't give them the kind of power over somebody to get away with possibly, hurting somebody, doing things that are not consensual. So, that power element is why these guys gravitated towards Epstein and why Epstein was into this kind of shit. It was like a power thing. And it was about seeing the lower class as just a tool for your use. It had so much more to do with that than just these people being pervs or whatever. That's like really missing the point, and that is what Andrew Schultz is very good at doing.
That's why I asked the question.
Okay, so if you notice, like all the people related to Epstein files, right? There's really no entertainers and no like athletes,
No.
like almost zero.
Yeah.
Right? Who is it? It's like
It's because he only messed with billionaires, not millionaires.
scientists.
He did have some artist type people, though, I think, for cultural reasons, and people, that made him feel like he was a part of the cultural milieu. I guess.
Politicians,
Spiritual leaders.
billionaires,
Yeah.
right? Like hedge fund dudes, finance guys, right? It's really all like fat, short nerds, okay? Who are super alphas in their life. They're the most brilliant people in every room they step in. They feel like they are the man constantly, except for one aspect of their life.
Little dicks.
I don't know how big their dicks are, but I know when they're in a room and it's them and Denzel Washington, the girls ain't looking at them. When Bill Gates, there's the perfect picture, and Bezos isn't on the island or anything like that. But remember that video of Jeff Bezos and his new wife meeting Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yes.
Remember
I do
the
remember
way
that.
his wife is looking at Leonardo DiCaprio. Like Bezos isn't even there. She's drooling over this meeting with Leonardo DiCaprio. Jeff Bezos is like, I built the most successful company in the world. I'm going to send you to space. And Leonardo DiCaprio is just in the room and she can't even look at her husband. And
Dude, this guy is
I think that's what they go through in their everyday life. They're like, why am I an alpha in every single
yeah, you're definitely right. There are celebrity type people who are involved with this shit for sure.
situation? I do whatever the fuck I want. These are the crazy people who made $200 million and felt like they had to make more than that.
They made more than that. But I agree
My
with what
point-
you're saying.
The point I'm trying to say is I think the reason, I don't think it's just with Epstein. I think they're getting hookers and stuff all the time.
But why underage is what I'm saying. Why underage in particular and specifically? Why is it underage girls?
I don't know. I honestly,
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, it's like, are they natural born pedophiles, or is this some like type of ritual?
so what
like,
you're alleging is they're requesting them to be underage.
I'm
which
just
I think
Yeah, I don't know. Like I see these clips occasionally and I watch it just to see what the masses are consuming. Especially because this guy like had something to do with getting getting Trump into office.
wondering why is so many underage girls. This shit.
do you want to know what I think?
But this guy here, Roger Solenberger, this is the guy who has been putting out all of these new articles on the new Trump accuser. And this is a new one that was published today. He's been putting things out like every day at this point, it seems. And this right here, it gets deeper. So it says DOJ deleted record revealing that Maxwell holds potential blackmail over Trump. This is something that has been kind of, I think, known since the birthday book, because it's been, you know, it's been speculated that she released it or her family released it. The document, which was reposted after I reposted the removal, shows Maxwell's lawyers possess three FBI interviews with an underage Trump accuser that haven't been released to the public. So these are probably things that are, you know, in the 6 million or 3 million or how many of her files still haven't been released to the public. On Wednesday, I reported that the Justice Department had removed from its Epstein file database a key document about a woman who told the FBI that Donald Trump assaulted her when she was a child. By Thursday evening, it was once again live. It's unclear why the DOJ deleted the document in the first place. It's also unclear why they put it back up after my reporting, which included a screenshot of relevant information and a link to an internet archive of the full record. That's probably why, because they were like, oh, okay, it's all over the internet anyway. We can't, you would think that they would have learned that they can't just like delete things after putting them up, but they do it anyway, which just makes them look more guilty. The information in the document pertaining to the Trump accuser, whom the DOJ identifies as a victim of Jeffrey Epstein in the early mid-1980s, doesn't appear altered in any way. However, the existence of this record, more specifically the public's knowledge of its existence, carries significant implications when it comes to the president and the DOJ's posture against Epstein co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell. That's because this document shows the FBI conducted not just one, but 4 interviews with Trump's accuser. And as I reported Wednesday, while the government gave all 4 of those interviews to Maxwell's legal team ahead of their trial, the government gave only one of those 4 interviews to us in the Epstein files. And that was probably by mistake. In other words, this document shows that in choosing to withhold 3 of the 4 interviews from the Epstein files, the DOJ has granted Maxwell potential blackmail on the sitting president of the United States. That is kind of wild, because it's saying basically the summary here is that, you know, the Maxwell legal team has a whole bunch of different documents that the public doesn't have, obviously, from discovery and disclosures and things like that that have happened in the course of their various legal proceedings. So many of these documents probably incriminate a bunch of people, including Trump. And anything that Maxwell has that the public doesn't have is leverage for her. And it says Maxwell held this leverage over Trump since her team received the files in batches from DOJ prosecutors as a standard part of their trial prep in 2021. In April, July, and October, the records show, the victim was suing Epstein's estate at the time, settling with a reported payout in December 2021. So a court has determined that this was credible enough to get a payout from Epstein's estate, and this is somebody that's also accusing Trump. But if DOJ had released those interviews with the Epstein files, as it appears the laws absolutely requires, any leverage Maxwell had would be gone. Yeah, so it's saying if the DOJ actually did what the law said with releasing everything in full, then this leverage would not exist. Instead, Trump's DOJ, starring Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, and Kash Patel, let her keep it. What's more, the American people still wouldn't even know that Maxwell could potentially be blackmailing the president with these sworn victim statements if it weren't for the existence of precisely this document, the document I caught DOJ removing from its public database. Notably, you can ascertain the existence of the 3 missing FBI interviews without this document. That's not why this document is special. The record that disappeared and is now back online is an evidence catalog showing that those interviews were among the non-witness material that the DOJ prosecutors produced for Maxwell's defense team. In other words, this document is proof that Maxwell's attorney have those 3 interviews. It's also proof that all 4 of those interviews, part of DOJ's Maxwell trial evidence, should in fact have been released to the public in the Epstein files. Why didn't Trump's DOJ release all of the victims' FBI interviews? Why would the DOJ be fine with Maxwell's attorney holding these records while apparently denying them to the American public in defense of the law? The DOJ should release those interviews to the public, an act that would coincidentally considerably weaken the hand that we now know Maxwell perhaps uniquely holds over the president. That was very oddly worded. I feel like that sentence was not meant to be read out loud. Let's see. Trump has said multiple times in recent months that he would consider clemency for Maxwell. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like this has a big, big part to do with it. I appreciate that. I always worry that I am not clear enough or I trip up too much. So I appreciate that. Let's see. Yeah, so this basically talks about how they're kind of positioning for some kind of pardon or clemency or something like that. And this document here is all of the evidence that the Maxwell legal team has from a specific trial. I think I'm not sure if this is her whole trial because this seems like a short list, but regardless, I think because of how these late interviews are labeled and the initial release that happened, they were able to kind of pinpoint that some of these documents that the Maxwell team has are incriminating things about Trump that the public doesn't have. So it's literal proof that she has blackmail on him. And this is probably why she's staying in that nice place and all that. There were a couple of other really crazy stories in this vein that I found today. What wasn't even is this from the emails? I'm not sure. New files show Epstein, who had close ties with Israel, was offered sensitive U.S. government real estate deals, including the Pentagon and FBI buildings. Emails released in the Epstein files show that Epstein was offered the chance to buy into a sprawling building tied to the Department of Defense in 2016. So this was way after the world knew who he was and what he was. The 84,000 square meter complex located roughly, 1 mile from the Pentagon in Arlington, was described in an investor deck as a mission critical site that the only property in Arlington, Virginia, other than the Pentagon itself, with the ability to meet the space and infrastructure needs of the Department of Defense. They were trying to get like an investment from him, essentially, for a massive Department of Defense building. That's insane. The proposed purchase price was about $116 million. The structure of the deal would have made Epstein co-owner and effectively landlord to the U.S. government. There is no evidence that the transaction went ahead, but the prospect of a convicted, acquiring a stake in property serving the Pentagon raises serious security questions. Among millions of emails published last month, an FBI informant wrote in a memo that Epstein was a Mossad agent Where is the? I want to see the email. See if they linked it. No. I'm gonna have to track down that email and find it, because that is quite interesting. Real estate investor Jonathan D. Facility originated both property proposals. He also sent Epstein a separate proposal in 2015 to invest in 2 FBI field offices in Richmond and Baltimore and courthouses, which were called sexy assets. The deal required an initial $25 million, followed by another $80 million, with ownership routed through the Cayman Islands offshore entity. Yeah, I would be interested to see like how far along that deal was. Yeah. Yeah, I know. They probably will ban PDF. Who is this realtor guy? He works in sports and real estate development. He's a billionaire American businessman. Member of the Vernado Reality Trust Board of Trustees, former CEO, president of the company. He is the co-owner of the Milwaukee Bucks. And in 2017, founded a $500 million SPAC, Landscape Acquisitions, with Noam Godesman, where they were both the co-chairman. Looks like he makes a lot of political donations. Interesting for sure. And then I saw this as well about the Israeli government installed and maintained a security system at Epstein's apartment. Now, this is not the New York apartment that we've all seen pictures of. This is the apartment that was like adjacent to it, that his brother was staying in for a while, that a lot of the models were staying in as well. Let's see what this says. This is, let's see, drop site always has, oh, it's not too long. I could get through this. Yeah. The Israeli government installed security equipment and controlled access to a Manhattan apartment building managed by Epstein, according to the set of emails recently released by the Department of Justice. The equipment was installed starting in early 2016 at 301 East 66th Street, the residence where former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak frequently stayed for stretches at a time. Okay, I mean, that makes sense. The security operation at Ehud's apartment was in place for at least 2 years, emails from the DOJ disclosures show, with officials from the Israeli permanent mission to the United Nations corresponding regularly with Epstein's staff regarding security. The apartment was technically owned by a company connected to Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, but was effectively controlled by Jeffrey Epstein. Units in the building were frequently loaned out to Epstein's contacts and used to house underage models. Rafi Shlomo, then director of protective services at the Israeli mission to the United Nations in New York and head of Barak security, corresponded with Epstein employees to arrange meetings to discuss security and coordinate installation of specialized surveillance equipment at 66th Street residence. Shlomo personally controlled access to the apartment for guests and even conducted background checks on cleaners and Epstein's employees. Under Israeli law, former prime ministers and other high-ranking officials typically receive security services after they leave office. According to the emails, Epstein personally approved the installation of the equipment and authorized meetings between his staff and Israeli security officials. Ehud Barak and the Israeli mission to the United States did not respond to requests for comment. At the time of Epstein's death in 2019, Barak downplayed his connection to the disgraced financier, stating that while he had met Epstein several times, he didn't support me or pay me. They had a business together. I did a video on that. What was it called? Carbine with a Y? Yeah, it is weird. In the beginning of this whole thing, Mark Epstein was like, "I have no clue about any of this. I wasn't. I was in a totally different city. I was in some other city. He was in New York. Yet he was staying in the apartment that you know he was housing the victims in." So this goes in more into the relationship with him and Barack, which we've covered extensively. Um, let's see. That is wild. Eh, That that's significant. I mean, he was that close with the former prime minister that they provided him with a building that they wired down. That's crazy. Yeah, the only thing that Mark is right about is that something's funky with his brother's death. This email too, I had this in a little bit of a bad order. I should have mentioned this after I talked about the Ghislaine blackmail thing. But an email thread between presumably DOJ attorneys a few weeks after Trump lost in 2020 discussing the possibility of him pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell. For reference, Maxwell was arrested in July of 2020. She wasn't convicted until December 2021. So is it because of that thing that we saw because she had that info that we just saw a minute ago? Let's see what it says. Thanks. Let's just hope it's as off base as it sounds. The reporter is Tim Winter, who correctly reported, even though it's much easier to predict, the Flynn pardon before it happened. What? Where can we get on a call now? I'll call in and conference you. Just FYI, I forget how this went with D'Souza, but there wouldn't necessarily need to be any communication with us before pardoning one of our defendants, correct? That's correct. Normally, I wouldn't send. Oh, okay, so they for some reason put this on the second page. Normally, I wouldn't send something like this because it seems so unlikely. But just FYI, a reporter who's been reliable in the past is hearing serious rumblings from the White House about a pardon. And I don't know. Oh, wait, it says subject, Ghislaine Maxwell pardon down here. Wow. And they're talking about this in 2020, November of 2020. So this was after he lost the election, but before he was put out of office, before January 6th, but I believe after election day, right? So they were thinking that he was going to pardon Ghislaine on his way out. He might already knew that she had that information from Discovery or whatever. This is just crazy. Yeah, I'm gonna be mad at myself for doing that in the wrong order when I try to edit later. So there's this let's see. A lot going on with Les Wexner, including one of his kind of, I think, most vocal accusers resurfacing. Well, let's take a quick listen to this. This is one of Whitney Webb's first appearances in a couple months, I think. She said that there's been a lot of videos of her in like the past 2 months that are just like AI and weren't even her, and that people were making money on. It's pretty crazy.
Wexner being arrested at
Oh, I
any
don't know if
point.
this is too low.
He is far too powerful, and his money is everywhere. And honestly, he has extremely deep ties to numerous officials in the Israeli government through his philanthropies. He focused pretty much the bulk of the Wexner Foundation on training up prominent figures, first in the U.S. In the Jewish community in particular, and now those fellows, those Wexner fellows, essentially run AIPAC. It has an extremely close relationship with AIPAC, obviously one of the most powerful lobbying groups in the United States. And the other side of his leadership training via his foundation has been with Israeli public officials who have, these relationships as a result of that. With Wexner. And I doubt, given, AIPAC's influence, as well as, what you touched on earlier with Israel's role with Epstein, it just does not seem particularly likely in any capacity. And I would also refer to the fact that one of the things that will never be investigated is the role of Epstein and also Wexner in this scandal that was covered up in the mid-1990s under the Clinton administration. That's remembered today as Chinagate, but was obviously a lot larger than that. It was a smuggling operation that utilized Southern Air Transport, which you'll remember as the CIA.
I'm gonna make a note. I've never heard of that. I'm gonna have to look into that. Maybe we'll talk about that on a future stream, because that sounds interesting. Chinagate with this Southern Air Transport. I'm surprised that hasn't come up when I was looking through Southern Air Transport for that video.
Front that was used to smuggle drugs and weapons during the Iran-Contra era. After the
Maybe it's because I stopped that Iran-Contra, perhaps.
Iran-Contra era, the Iran-Contra crowd utilized the same network again to facilitate Chinagate, and they used Southern Air Transport, which came into direct connection to be dominant in that same period of time, was dominated by Leslie Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein, and they had it relocated not that far from New Albany, Ohio, just to run their cargo, so ostensibly for the limited. From the Rickenbacker Airport in Ohio to Hong Kong. And people like Ohio's Inspector General called it the Mayor Lansky route because he argued they were affiliated with the mob. And Columbus PD, just a few years prior, had produced a document linking Leslie Wexner to the mob and his network in the murder of the lawyer for the Limited, Arthur Shapiro. And in that document, they detailed extensive ties of Wexner to organized crime affiliates. And as I noted in my book, citing Catherine Austin Fitts, she was at an event and overheard a government official say that Leslie Wexner was one of the main launderers for organized crime cash flows in the United States. And this is something, as I've detailed in my book, that Epstein was very involved with this network that involves organized crime and intelligence, specifically in allowing them to illicitly move funds and in money laundering. And so, arguably, Epstein was a front for that for Leslie Wexner. And this is stuff that they absolutely will, they just can't touch with a 10-foot pole without massive reverberations, for the national security state of the U.S., which has been beholden to this, shadow government of sorts in which Epstein operated, but he was a middleman for it. He was not the head of it. And so until there's an investigation into the people behind Epstein, including Wexner, and justice there, I think most of what we're going to end up seeing is going to be superficial, and maybe more will be admitted or discovered in these Epstein files, but don't expect the government to necessarily do anything about it.
Right.
Yeah, that's sadly true. I mean, hopefully we see some kind of justice, but especially with this administration, something going to have to happen there, because they are not going willingly. So this case, George Tonks, surprised that I hadn't heard of this person, but this is a victim of Epstein and Wexner, and introduced some other people that he had dealt with and some other situations. He has a very, very multiple really long interviews with this journalist that originally interviewed Sasha Riley, Lisa Noel Voldang. I think I'm going to go through some. He actually has a pretty extensive internet footprint. So we'll check out his profiles and kind of see what he has put out there. If you want to check out the interviews themselves, like I said, they're very long, they're very graphic. So I would, definitely warn you before listening, but I'll link it in the show notes in the Discord, and you could find it there. And you could also search he's fine. They threw him in a dumpster. That's the headline there. So he describes basically how he was pulled into Les Wexner's orbit in a very young age, and he was kind of recruited as a male model at the age of like 12 years old or something like that. And he described this mafia group that Wexner was involved in, and that they had these parties with young boys, and that a lot of these people were involved, and that he stayed in Wexner's house for a period of time. He even described Wexner having mummies in his house, like actual mummies that ended up going to a museum at some point. And yeah, which I thought was definitely a bizarre detail for sure. And he has also done artwork with Maria Farmer, and him and Maria Farmer have I'm not sure if any of these are the ones he did with her, but I know that he has done work with her. Maybe we could find it when we look through some of his social media. Um, this was in the late 1970s until the 1980s. So I think that this was in a very similar time that Sasha describes. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so this is quite interesting. Um and like I said, I'm surprised that I hadn't seen this before. Yeah, exactly, exactly. No, I'm not gonna do the audio. But I would, if you want to on your own, I'll definitely have the link in the show notes. But I'm gonna go through his social media pages here. So yeah, he says that the mafia group that Wexner was a part of called themselves the Jew Crew. And in addition to like organized crime, they also were involved in, these kind of this kind of child trafficking network. He says it's time we begin questioning the family members of Leslie Wexner's interior designer, Richard Himmel. His son, John Himmel, and his daughter in law, Roxanne Himmel, are aware of far more than has been publicly acknowledged. Leslie Wexner attended John and Roxanne's wedding in Chicago. Wexner was inseparable from Richard Himmel, and the two socialized extensively at hustler bars, nightclubs, and dance clubs and private gay members only organizations throughout Chicago during the 1970s and 1980s. After Mr. Florisheim's longtime hairdresser, Lance Dufresne, known for being outspoken, began reporting that he had witnessed many of those involved abruptly left Chicago. They relocated to New York, California, Florida, Acapulco, Mexico. Complaints are filed with the Mexican consulate in Chicago as early as the 1980s concerning Leslie Wexner, Alan Kramer, and Richard Himmel. What? Why did I go backwards? Let's see. What are these? I'm not sure what these text messages are supposed to be. The 80s were when Richard was doing his stores and private residences. Yeah, I don't know who this is supposed to be. Great, I have two girls from John H. He wouldn't be too kind to me blabbering, but of course he knows the truth. So that's John Himmel. Yeah, it's just like I wish that George put some context here. Yeah, it is the same profile picture. He had pictures of himself when he was let's see. Yeah, he had other pictures. I think it might have been on his other page. Let's see. Here he's talking about other people. Strauss Zelnick. I don't know if we came across him. But this George Tonks also has a Substack where, I think I deleted my account. That sucks. Let's see. Let's see if I create account. No. Continue without subscribing. Okay. Let's see. Let me sign in because I was able to look at it earlier. I don't know why they're blocking me now. Yeah, I think it might be the same guy. There was multiple picture. I think I saw one where he took a picture of where he showed a picture of himself at one of the modeling agencies that was run by Wexner. I got my code here. Hold on. All right. So now I got to go to this link again. I thought I deleted my Substack account. See, look, this is the photo that was taken in San Francisco office at the DuPont Model Agency in the 1980s. Diana, who was a model, is seated at the desk. During the time, she frequently flew in from Paris to speak in detail. Sorry about that. About her agent, Jean-Luc Brunel of Karen Models, who was also a close associate of Jeffrey Epstein. The accounts she shared were deeply disturbing, nearly impossible to believe. Mostly troubling is that the federal government was aware for decades of Jean-Luc Brunel and his trafficking operation, yet failed to take action. If anyone has information about Strauss Zelnick, who has been accused of harassing a former Harvard Business School student, please DM me. The victim is a straight man who wishes to remain anonymous at this time. Leslie Wexner's involvement continues to surface. See, he shares these screenshots of these conversations, but doesn't say who they're with. The GoFundMe? I'll have to look for the GoFundMe. Is it on the link tree? Doesn't look like it. Google his name. I'm surprised I didn't look at it earlier. Let's see. There's a GoFundMe. I'm seeing the Substack. I'm seeing the Instagram. Or is it just George Tonks? He's got a YouTube. Oh, yeah, I looked at his YouTube. It's just other people's videos. Oh yeah, I got a comment from Dan Faree, the limo driver. If you're out there, Dan, I'm happy to talk to you. If because you said that there were some issues with the files. Um, definitely, if you want to clear anything up. I'm not seeing it. Yeah, there's apparently beef with him and the lawyers, but there's also beef with the lawyers and Maria Farmer as well. That there's issues with some of the lawyers for sure. Not seeing anything here. DuPont Model Management. In the late 1980s, my company, DuPont Model Management, was flourishing until the Jewish mob targeted me for exposing the underage sex scandals with the boys involving Leslie Wexner and other members of their self proclaimed Jew crew. Oh, okay. Thank you. Here's the GoFundMe. Let's see if it's the same guy. I copied the. That is one of the most annoying features about GoFundMe because when you copy message link instead of copy link, and it, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, he's asking for $100, and that's interesting. What's he asking for money for? For over 30 years, the federal government has tried everything imaginable to discredit and destroy me with blatant lies. There are no words to describe the torture that I have endured. The level of corruption is unconscionable. When did he put this up last year? Yeah, that's interesting. That might be the guy, I think. I think that's him. Let's see. He didn't mention. He doesn't. Yeah, yeah. He does mention Biden. That's interesting. Yeah. No. Today was my first time coming across this guy when he was on that. When he had that interview. See how far this goes back. Tamara Joy Cox Kessler. Special Investigative Counsel, Principal Contributor Office of the Inspector General. Let's see who she is. He's calling out a lot of people I've never heard of before in here. Board of Directors, the Dunstan Y Foundation. Huh. That's kind of weird. Oh, wait, let's see. Oh, it's a prosecutor. So it probably is this person. An attorney serving. Yeah, it might be. Unless I'm looking at people that are too recent. That could be the issue. Let me take a look at this account again. He admitted to turning into who admitted to turning into a demon? That's who did that? Let's see. He was introduced to John DuPont in Chicago by Leslie Wexner and Alan Kramer. Over time, John became fixated on me, often making comments about my genetics. During that period, he was experimenting with steroids, which he obtained through Joe Weider. His behavior could become extremely violent, and the rages he went through were intense. When John was in the States, I would sometimes leave and stay with Dr. J. Eldridge in New Jersey. Jay openly expressed an interest in boys under the age of 15. He was highly connected, spoke several languages, and received frequent calls from the Pope. It's interesting that John maintained close relationships with doctors who treated college athletes at multiple universities during that time. Looking back, the overlap between these relationships and what later came to light at Ohio State raises questions. Below is a photo of Jay with the Pope. Let's see. Every U.S. attorney's office is weaponized by Wexner to target his enemies, and competitors have a lot to answer for. I feel like I've showed one of this guy's tweets on stream before. This was another person that was mentioned, I think. Someone sent me this picture of Lincoln Higgy, one of Les Wexner's and Alan Kramer's antique dealers. I was 13 when he assaulted me at his shop on Halsted Street in Chicago. Leslie and Alan Kramer owned the building where the store was located. I'll never forget the Lincoln's eye. I think it was glass. Leslie asked if I could go and pick up a piece of art for him at the store, which was set up. Yeah. Crazy Leslie would talk about the naked men on the Greek pottery. Oh, yeah, you could tell he does have a glass eye, and he's got a parrot on him. Huh. So he's been posting a lot. Tomorrow there will be a survey regarding Les Wexner, the founder. Let's see. Below, a victim of Strauss-Zelnick speaks out. Okay. Now we have some context on at least who is in this. So he's speaking with another survivor here. Aren't you the one working to expose Les Wexner in the web of abuse? Very few people have addressed Les Wexner. He was the owner of a firm called Second City Capital Partners. There is an SEC filing showing that he and Epstein owned it. A man named Strauss-Zelnick recruited me while I was a business school student at Harvard, and he attempted to harass me. Somehow, Les Wexner has stayed behind the scenes, but he seemed to be enabling a lot of abuse. Yeah, these people are literally like comic book villains. It's pretty crazy. Very crazy. So this is definitely another person to keep an eye on and give a follow, especially because they are active. I think we'll probably see a lot more from him as time goes on. I saw this, saw a couple of other files that were kind of interesting. So I first want to confirm, but regardless, this is a bizarre exchange, and I did. Let me just look it up on Gmail, so it's not just a screenshot, so I know it's legit. How do I? Let me see the term I'm searching for, because this is a bizarre one. Why is the okay? Yeah. So this is rumored to be talking about Trump, and it's talking about him like peeing on people, but they're referring to him as Baron. He actually held his bladder all night until at Fisher, although he jumped on Cairo the other night and seriously tried her on the bed. Big time humping. She is his size. The Baron is growing up. This is Philip Levine to Maxwell. But let's see what the whole exchange says, because for some reason it wouldn't bring the thing up. How could you send me pictures of Barron being unfaithful with another woman? I am devastated. Tell me he did not pee on her too. At least if he did not do that, I know that he does not feel threatened. So I still hold pride of place. Let me look up pride of place, just make sure that one's. She used that a lot. Okay, yeah, this is legit. I found it on Gmail. So I want to find out, did Trump go by John Barron? Yeah, and then apparently named his son. Oh my God, look at this. This is actually true. Trump used the alias John Barron, sometimes John Barron, throughout the 1980s, with its earliest known usage in 1980s and its last acknowledgement in 1990. Trump stopped using the pseudonym after he was compelled to testify in court proceedings that John Barron was one of his pseudonyms. So he stopped using this name after it became public that he was using this name. So he was using this name for some kind of shady reasons, I'm sure. Look, there is a Wikipedia page dedicated to pseudonyms used by Donald Trump. That doesn't sound right. Like, here's all the fake names your president had, because he was running scams and faking publicity. He would call in to radio shows and stuff as other people, I think. Yeah, see, look. In 1991, a reporter for People attempted to interview Trump about the end of his marriage to Ivana Trump and his rumored association with other women. She was called back by a publicist who gave his name as John Miller, who gave her a long interview about Trump's marital affairs. He's a good guy and he's not going to hurt anybody. He treated his wife well and he will treat Marla well. His attractiveness to women and his wealth. So he basically made up a fake character to call reporters and tell them how awesome Trump was. And he had many of these aliases, and he probably did. I'm pretty sure there were scam things happening too. I mean, come on. Maybe it was just a publicity game, but I feel like it was deeper. So they're talking about here, how could you send me pictures of Barron being unfaithful with another woman? I don't know. Tell me he did not pee on her too. So I don't know, like, were Trump and Maxwell a thing? Is she just being sarcastic? Who is Philip Levine? Because that's who this is happening with. I don't think it's the poet. Former Miami Beach mayor. That's who it is. When was this email sent? 2002. So, you know, I mean, this is not long. This is like a decade after he stopped using that name publicly, but I would imagine his friends would still. Let's see, John Barron. No, what about Barron? There's a bunch of weird stuff in here, like things he ordered. We'll Get Barron Mag. It's 2011. Barron Test Prep. James Barron. Ron Barron. But these are all. Oh, wait. One of these is in 2022. Couple of things. Did anything happen with Ron Barron? Want to make sure that you know that the lunch is on Wednesday is at Bear Mini U JE plus 42. Do you have the time and the address? Need your schedule to analyze your birthday gift. Need to know dates from now till the end of October when you are in the city, available for 2 hours day or night. I need rough times too, because, well, just fill in the gap. Ron Barron. It's possible she was talking about Ron Barron. Did anything happen with? We don't know who Ron Barron is yet, though. So let's work on that. Ron Barron in the Black Book. I'm not sure. That's a good question. Baron G. Collier is the trustee who represented as a seller on the contract. See, that's not from Maxwell, though. Let's see who Ron Barron is. Business person. Mutual fund manager. I don't know. Maybe. What are the BPIT? What do you mean BPIT? What are the emails?